this kind of sperm donor community. But how did you convince your subjects to be a part of this and to be so candid?
Well, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I never thought I'd be able to talk about Spermworld, which is on Disney Plus. Look at that. But I think you know, every setting in the world presents its own challenges and opportunities. I think with this story, it's a very sensitive subject matter. Obviously, these are the unregulated sperm donor world. People who meet on Facebook outside of the traditional means of, you know, sperm banks and stuff like that. It took a lot of time. I think it takes time and curiosity that can lead you to somebody, and really, hopefully, having the resources to just be with someone for long periods of time. I'd say for anything, I'm curious for you guys too. It was you know, FX who allowed us to make this film. It was not an easy pitch by any means. I was, you know, I'm going to be filming people masturbating and then giving their sperm, and hopefully children will be made, and we'll watch this happen. I mean, that was sort of the pitch. You know, so I'd say really, if anything, I think it was equal parts just, it's a sensitive subject matter, and we had to have a really sensitive approach to the subject. But I'm curious how you guys got going. Got people to give you money.
I have a very different pitch than that. Sure. There's no masturbating, at least on camera. No, I mean, I agree with you. It's relationship building, and the biggest asset is always time, because, you know, you're asking people to be vulnerable and open and honest, and, you know, that doesn't, you can't show up with a camera no matter what you're filming and just, you know, expect that. And I think audiences have become so attuned, sophisticated, when, you know, it doesn't feel genuine. And so, you know, that's a function of time. It's a, you know, real relationship building. So, I mean, in my case, I was working with Bon Jovi and the band. You know, and I think they've been around, you know, for a long time, and you know, it's, you have to crack through and sort of really develop that authentic relationship.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I probably had the same experience with these music groups who have been around forever. They have the pat answer. They've been asked the same question a million times, and they have the answer, and you have to spend the time with them and get their trust in order for them to dig down under and get the real, authentic. Their answer is pretty shallow, so to get, you know, underneath, you have to spend a lot of time with them.
Frank, you just mentioned shallow, so coming at this from a different perspective, we filmed octopus sex, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, and it was a first.
And it's a little different because you're not like asking them. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's communication involved. We see that in the documentary, but yeah, earning their trust looks a little different. A little different. Joey, yours, of course, with the Black Twitter documentary, is also sort of different because it's both, you know, getting the trust of the people who are kind of going to be your talking heads walking through Black Twitter, but then also getting the trust of the audience, who are like, okay, what are y'all going to be saying about Black Twitter?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Who all going to be there was like the first question for anybody that we were talking to. There was this enormous responsibility to tell the story about a community, and you don't want to disrespect that. You don't want to come at it wrong. So yeah, it was about earning the trust of the people that we were going to be talking to, but also of the folks that were going to be watching it. And we knew that we were going to be in conversation with Black Twitter the entire time. And that started from the very beginning. Like, I remember we first had a 30-second teaser come out, and you would have thought people had seen the whole thing because they had major, big feelings. They were in their feelings. Rightfully so. Because it's a very precious community that we wanted to take that time with. And I think just like in any film that I've made, just like all of you guys have said, it's always about earning that trust and being empathetic to wanting to listen. People want to tell their stories, I think. So that's really where you just have to sit there and give them the time to do it, because you can't just automatically be like, masturbate right here. You have to earn that, you know, that takes a little bit of time.
At what point did each of you kind of know that you had the story? That, okay, we are in a groove, we have the thing that is actually gonna be like the heart of this piece.
Well, with natural history, you never know. As Jim Cameron says, the individual I'm privileged to work with, nature doesn't get the script. So we've talked about sex, time, and trust. Natural history takes an enormous amount of time, and a lot of that time is establishing trust. Actually trusting yourself in sometimes very alien environments. In this series, Secrets of the Octopus, we have documented really what is, and we'll stand behind this, the first sustained octopus-human contact. And that took a lot of time and a lot of trust, and it's extraordinary.
I'd say, you know, when you're making a doc, you kind of don't know until you're in the edit. And that's hard. You'll be having an amazing shoot. You'll have a great interview. You'll be like, this is awesome. Like, we're cracking up, we're laughing. But until you're in that edit bay and you're starting to see the cuts coming through, you know, you're like, is this good? You know?
Yeah, I'm like chronically existentially insecure, and so I mean I'm like waiting for the audience to react. You know, it's like,
yeah,
because you know what also happens in our case is you're in that edit room for a long time, going over cuts and cuts and cuts, and then you sort of form a family with your editors and your producers and your writers, and you're all looking at it, this is good, right? Like, this is really good. And then you don't know until you're in front of an audience and they laugh at the right places or, you know, wince at the right places, and sometimes that's surprising, because sometimes it comes at places you didn't expect. But yeah, I mean, I certainly, you know, there were probably a few breakthroughs with, again, a subject that I was able to study so much, like with John and the band, because there was so much history, and so I kind of felt like I knew a lot, and then once in a while something would happen, or he would say something that felt very different. It was like an uncovered gem, and that was definitely very satisfying, but again, you don't really know.
What was one of those things?
Man, you know, we went through the doc as a 40-year retrospective, part of it, but there's also this real-time story about a rock star losing his voice, and his willingness to open up about that and really sort of get emotional about like the weight on his shoulders, and just like, you know, he got in his feelings quite a few times, and I think that was the stuff, with just like how important this was to him. You know, and it made it feel very urgent, and so that was special.
Yeah, I agree that what I love about documentary filmmaking is the freedom. In my day job, I have a script. I know every second what we're doing, what people are doing, what they're going to say, and it goes in a certain order. But with a doc, you start with the world, and you discover along the way what your story is going to be, and so the script gets written at the end rather than the beginning. And I love that.
Frank, backstage, we were talking about one of your moments of discovery on the Bee Gees doc, you know, finding this amazing usher to kind of help tell the story. What was one of those with the Beach Boys?
Well, I discovered, I was trying to do a discovery of the creative process, as what made them tick. And I grew up in Newport Beach, about 20 miles south of Hawthorne, where they grew up. In the same time period, my dad was in the music business. I had a band, and I kind of wanted to find out why their band worked and mine didn't. But in that voyage of discovery, I found, as I was talking to each of them that are still with us, that there were two Beach Boys groups in the 60s. And it was really Brian who stayed here and created a lot of music. And the other guys went on the road, and they had a great time on the road. I mean, the 60s on the road must have been fantastic. But they would come back, and then they would go into the recording studio, and Brian would have all the parts laid out, and they would sing. They would all sing, and all the music tracks were there, and he would then produce them. So there were really two groups, and I didn't really know that. That was something I discovered.
What did the discovery process look like for you, Lance? I mean, there's following, I guess I should mention as well that both your documentary and Black Twitter are both based on, you know, heavily reported articles, but then you all had to kind of go in and still find new stories. So what was kind of your discovery process with people that, you know, maybe you could read about or that had been interviewed on TV before?
Yeah, well, for Spermworld, the origins, I guess, were it started with a kind of an outline of a story. Nellie Bowles, a reporter at the Times, I remember it was the election day, a long time ago. She sent me basically, hey, what do you think of this? And can you help me maybe look around, see if there's anything interesting in here? And so there was this really nice collaborative thing going on between the two of us. And then once we started making the film, it really just became a thing that I was kind of just going off of instinct. But I guess the main thing for Spermworld, you know, the title is maybe a little misleading. I like making films that start in places that seem very foreign to me or an audience, and hopefully by the end you will have so deeply related to it that it probably will make you feel strange, or you know, the fact that you're seeing yourselves in people that you probably would never otherwise meet. And that's sort of the joy of making these kinds of movies, is in a way tracing and finding the parts of myself, you know, in bathrooms with people who are, you know, masturbating or whatever it may be. You know, there's something really, the whole tension of the film is that these are two people who are meeting really at the edge of the earth. They have tried to get pregnant, women who have tried that have failed. It's too expensive to go to a sperm bank, and they are meeting men who they have no idea who they are like. Maybe their first interaction is in a parking lot at a Target, and what do they say to each other, and what is the commonalities, and where do they differ, and how does that all feel? So every moment in time when we were filming any of these interactions, it was tense, it was funny at times, and then it was really poignant, the promise that something amazing could just be right around the corner if you just stick around in the awkwardness a little bit.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the approach to that as well, because your documentary, it does have a lot of like verite. Like, it's a lot of you just kind of, you know, observing these interactions with people. How did you want to kind of craft what you were going to see and how much you were going to interact and how much you wanted to, you know, kind of dig into the process versus what they were just going to kind of naturally tell you via their conversations with each other?
Well, I think in filming so many of these sperm transactions, right? There's a kind of internal. Each interaction has sort of a, you know, people are going to meet. Maybe there'll be some small talk. What's the most immediate, quickest way that two people that are complete strangers can endear themselves to one another, so then they can feel comfortable enough to try having a child? And so I knew that there would be like, how am I going to photograph this? I think Daniel Garber, who is my editor, and I've lived with him while we were making this movie, so there was not a lot of distance apart from one another. But the thing that we really set out to do, and same with my cinematographer, David Boland, and my composer, Ari Bluesian, we really wanted to make this function and feel like a narrative film, that you're not just observing someone, you're in the same headspace as them, and you're basically embodying and immersing yourself, exactly aligning yourself with where they are. So a lot of it really comes from interviews that you never see in the movie that allow us to get to that place, and then a lot of it comes from just being around and seeing things and hoping for magic to present itself in the world.
Frank and Gotham, I wanted to ask you all about working with the archive, because you have all of these incredible performances, oftentimes these like incredible first performances, but then there's also those like unreleased demos and all of these like little things that you can come up with. About, if you could estimate, like how many hundreds of thousands of hours between the music and the videos and the interviews, and what were we working with here when we were talking about 4 and 6 decades of stardom?
Well, one of the great things about making docs is you have to have a fantastic team behind you. It's much different because you're on this journey of discovery. It's like a little treasure hunt, and when you get these archives from the members of the band or the families, and you ask them, do you have a shoebox under the bed that has some 8mm film in it still? And a lot of times they do. And so, but there's this team behind us of archivists who are looking for unseen. I like to try and find unseen footage and photos. You probably had a ton of stuff.
Oh my God. I mean, one of the things I discovered early on is John is a hoarder. He is like hoarded stuff just like over 40 years. It was incredible. Like, it wasn't particularly organized. You know, he had to go through this vocal surgery, and one of the things they told him was like, you can't move. Like, you literally have to stay still because he had an implant and it had to sort of like grow in. So that's when he started in his basement to start organizing this crazy archive that so we kind of like filmed him organizing, and he would literally find, oh, here's an unreleased song, Cadillac Man, from a movie it never got made, so the song never, you know, was released. It was incredible. And then, you know, the Bon Jovi, the rise of Bon Jovi, you know, as a lot of fans know, it's like really their third and fourth album, Slippery When Wet, and then New Jersey. That sort of coincided with the rise of MTV. So now you had everything was documented. And then when the band came back in the 90s, like after a brief breakup, it was sort of like the rise of VH1. And so you just had, everything was documented. And like Frank said, I mean, it's an army of researchers who really are just, like, that's what they do. They go on these treasure hunts, and it's, I mean, you had sort of mentioned earlier, when do you know? You start to see like some of this stuff, you're like, oh my God, this is gonna be. And then there's the challenge of like, how do I elevate this? I mean, in John's case and Richie's case, you know, who are both had written a lot of the music, there were notes and there were like the original lyrics on napkins and everything. And it's like, okay, now how do we make that sort of come alive? So visual effects artists, and it was like a whole team of people.
Yeah, we have people who not only look, they also listen. And so when we have the tapes from the sessions, we discovered a dark side of, well, the dad was pretty dark to begin with, but although the dad, to give him credit, Murray Wilson, who was the Beach Boys' dad, he did drop everything and get them a record deal, and he managed them for a while, and they got to Capitol. But then he became sort of a stage dad and wanted to take over and wanted them to do his music, and they fired him. And then he came to one of the sessions, and we discovered an audio. Brian left the tape running, and it's kind of an amazing portrait of that moment. So when you find that kind of stuff, then you say, oh, how do I work that in?
To the point that you were just making, Gotham, about the visual aspect of it as well, that of course comes in very much Joey in Black Twitter. You have to visualize, you know, what Twitter was, how you guys wanted to present these various tweets, these various memes, all of that. What did that look like as you were developing, like, the visual language of the stuff?
We wanted to figure out how to make the internet a television show. Like, what does that look like? How do you encapture the energy and the way that you interact with so much different content at one time when you're on Twitter and you're scrolling and you're inundated with something really sad, but then you get like this funny meme that pops in. And so that was something that we knew intentionally, like, we wanted graphically to be represented. But then beyond that, from the very beginning, our director, Prentice Penny, amazing leader, wanted to have all of the interviews be extremely unique and for them to look like places where you would actually tweet. And I felt like that was something that, as a documentarian, you often are shooting your interviews when you can and where you can, but this was extremely intentional. We could only do 2 per day. And we built these beautiful sets that were representative of all the spaces. So it was almost like an analog version of like where you would tweet and the avatar that you want to present to the world. So there were different elements. So like from the sets themselves to making those feel authentic to where people are experiencing Twitter, but then also visually on screen, how do we get all this information to you? We had, I believe it was something like 15,000 pieces of graphics that we had to create, and the archive was insane. We had to research tweets that would be, you know, that we would be using, and if we were going to use a meme or a GIF, we had to find the original person who had tweeted that so that we were, you know, legally doing it correctly. So I've done a lot of archival projects before, and you know, from people when it's like a celebrity or you know or whoever, and you're getting the archive. This was very different. This was very much digging and very much trying to make something that is made for usually your phone look good on a giant screen. So that was a challenge, but I think I love the way it came out.
Absolutely. It's very engaging. You feel like you are tweeting while you're watching it, and in a lot of cases, obviously reliving some of those memories and memes. Maria, I'm curious also about like the lessons that you all learned from the 2 previous Secrets of docs. You know, what was something that kind of developed out of, you know, looking at elephants and going from there to the octopus?
I think the principal learning, and maybe I shouldn't even characterize this as learning, quantitative analysis, there is enormous global demand for natural history. And so we have to ask ourselves why. I'm a bit of an outlier on this very esteemed panel, legendary panel, but I think what I'm representing is not a series, it's a mission. And it's a mission to reconnect people with nature. Secrets of the octopus, Secrets of the whales, our first time out, Secrets of the elephants, are really about an intimate connection with nature, participatory, not observational. We've probably heard about, or certainly you've heard the quote, that you don't conserve what you don't love. You don't love what you don't understand. So in an inspirational way, as a bit of a goad, we're really trying to reconnect people with nature, and it is working. There is a kind of moment of love for nature that's being expressed by the size of the audience that these series are garnering. And I don't say that in any self-congratulatory, chest-pounding way. We are working hard to do what we believe as a mission is important to every single one of us in the room. And we're doing that by bringing you into a world that is all around us, but often we don't see.
I love that point that you make about intimacy, because I think that is the thing. I think that is actually the through line between all of these documentaries, is because that is the medium that maybe is the most intimate form of storytelling. We are really getting a chance to fall in love, or fall in love again, with all these people or all these experiences. So I would love to hear from everyone about the kind of moment that you all, you know, fell in love with your subjects. But Maria, I'll start with you.
Well, I love this work, and it is something that you know, prompts an incredible humility. This series was filmed over 2 years on 4 continents in 5 countries with 1,500 hours underwater by teams that are expert and endlessly dedicated. And maybe as a parenthetical, we have Secrets of the Penguins up next year, and some of you may have seen a little clip of emperor penguin chicks approaching a 50-foot cliff and falling into the water, sometimes pushing each other. And that has now achieved something like more than 100 million views. So, look, I love all of this. We want everyone else to love it and to participate in it, because it is critical to our survival.
When they jump off the cliff, are they landing safely, or are they, okay, good.
The maturation process. Well, Lance, since you picked up the mic, what was the moment that you really found that connection and fell in love with your subjects?
Well, I think, I mean, for the types of films I make, I feel like if I'm not in love with the person that's in it, then it's not gonna work, and I'm gonna make something that sucks, I think, honestly. So I do think it happens early. I mean, I do a lot of, I talk to a lot of people. You know, I have another project also called Rent Fair that just came out, and that was a whole other process too, similar in some ways in the sense that I'm talking to many, many, many people, and eventually I think part of the thing I'm looking for is someone who can clearly articulate what they want in life. Yeah. In most cases, I think most people want to be bigger than life, right? That's why they probably want to be in a documentary or be seen in some sort of way. And in Spermworld, I think that's the connecting to what their desires are and what's blocking their desires, and that's ultimately what's animating every single moment. So yeah, I mean, I love them all. If I didn't, then I think it would be a bad movie. So you know, yeah.
You don't have to pick your favorite child. I understand.
I agree with you. You do have to have a love for the people that you're talking to in some capacity to give them, you know, the space to be themselves and to understand their humanity. I think for this project, while I was like super huge fan of most of the folks that we had sitting in the interview chair, we also did these sort of verite, almost like live tweet up scenes where we were talking to early users of Twitter, folks that hadn't, you know, that don't have, they're not well known as well known. And when we had them all together and they were in a room and they were like, oh, I've seen your tweets or I've seen your memes, and you know, and them sort of feeling seen in this way was really gratifying, and just like, okay, this, just as much as we knew that this was a piece of history that needed to be documented, it was amazing to be able to document these people and their connection to it.
Who wants to go second to last?
Okay, well, I agree. You have to be passionate about your subject. I mean, we spend hours and hours and hours in the cutting room and in interviews, and you have to love what you're doing. And I think in the music area, you got to love the music. I mean, there are some groups I don't think we do. Yes, I won't name them, but because you're listening to music over and over again. And for me, I grew up with the Beach Boys. It's an extraordinary story over 60 years now. It's people still going because their music makes you feel good, and I wanted to try and find out why. And you listen to it. Actually, Lance was asking me, you know, do you get tired of listening to music? You can't. You got to love the group or the singer, and you, because you're listening to it over and over and over again, and you discover things. And so you do have to be a passion. It has to be a passion project for you, each subject that you do, because you're not honest and you're not authentic if it isn't.
What was the song that you were most desiring to know the behind-the-scenes story about?
Well, it was Good Vibrations, you know, because they use a theremin in it, and I had a college professor at UCLA who invented the theremin. His name was Paul Tanner. He played the trombone, and he invented the theremin, and Brian somehow used that on Good Vibrations. No other pop group has done that.
Yeah, I may have sung Living on a Prayer or You Give Love a Bad Name a few times in karaoke growing up. I don't know, I mean, I agree with everybody here. You know, it's hard. These are all hard and takes a long time, and you're not working off a script, and so you have to go where the story goes, and you know, so you do have to love it. Mine, look, I had this incredible moment just like right at the beginning. John sought me out for this project because something else I had done. And you know, when I was sitting with him, and he was sort of, he had a vision, as he has historically had. That's how the band came into being. But he had the vision for a 4-part thing that was going to look back at 40 years, and I thought, okay, that's interesting, and you know, I'm familiar enough and to know, like, yeah, there's something here. But then I started to observe, like, well, like, what's going on with the voice? Like, I could tell literally at breakfast from his voice that something wasn't right. He said, oh, well, over the last 2 years, I've been losing my voice, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep doing this. I'm starting these rehearsals in 3 weeks, and so we were having breakfast here in LA. He said, I'm starting these rehearsals in 3 weeks in New Jersey, in Newark, to see where I'm at, and then I'm going on this 15-city tour in April. This is in 2022, for 30 days, and by the end of that, I'll know if I can still do this or if it's time to hang it up. Oh, but that's not for the documentary. I was like, oh, wow,
that's it.
Are you kidding
I'm
me?
in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was in Newark, New Jersey with him 3 weeks later at those rehearsals, following the story and building a relationship with him and Dave and Tico and the whole band, and just like becoming, you know, look, I always say, like, I'm not a reporter. I'm not here to do it on you. I'm a storyteller. I'm here to do it with you. And you can have 4 parts, you can have 40 parts. You're not going to get the entire story, especially a band, because everybody, and I definitely went through that. Richie Sambora's version of things is not the same as John Bon Jovi's version of things. So then you're also sort of trying to piece this puzzle together. And you know, it's filtered through time and emotions and everything. So again, you gotta love it, and you gotta just keep at it. I mean, I had to like be pulled off of this thing. And you know, and I don't know, maybe there's a sequel because John hasn't announced yet if he's coming back. But yeah, I think it's just like this. I love this medium. I admire everybody on the stage. I watch everybody's stuff because I feel like I'm always learning, and I get jealous and insecure. But yeah, that's kind of what it takes.
Well, we appreciate all of your love for this medium because it does, again, give all of us more love and appreciation for the topics that you cover and the people that you and the animals and the mammals and all of our sea creatures that it brings into our lives. So thank you guys so much for sharing, and thank you guys so much for sharing.